Today on the newscast, Israeli airstrikes in Syria, still more rockets targeting U.S. troops in Iraq, and a shadowy Hamas commander threatening Israel. It's a wars and rumors of wars update coming up. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. We've got three major Middle East stories that we are following right now. We'll give you a quick update in a minute. Before I do, real quick, I want to remind you that tomorrow, Thursday, May 6th, we are having another Watchman Newscast live stream event right here on our YouTube channel between 4 and 5 p.m. Eastern Time. I will be taking your questions. Not only that, I'll give you a Middle East briefing, and I will share some more of my personal testimony, how I became a Christian, more about my walk, more about my background. So you'll get to know me a little bit better during our live stream events. And the fun thing is we'll have a give and take, a dialogue. You'll ask the questions, I'll give the answers. Ask me anything. We have a lot of fun during our live stream events. So quick reminder, again, tomorrow, Thursday, May 6th, between 4 and 5 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on our YouTube channel. Be sure to join us. Hey, okay, let's get into it. Three major stories that we are following right now for you. Number one, overnight, Tuesday, May 4th, Israeli airstrikes in Syria. Now, the strikes targeted the coastal area in northwestern Syria, in particular around the city of Latakia there on the Mediterranean coast. According to Syrian state media, and of course Israel rarely comments or claims responsibility for these airstrikes, but we do have Syrian state media saying one person was killed, 6 were wounded, as Israel targeted a plastics warehouse around Latakia. Now, folks, two things here. Number one, this was very likely not a plastics factory. Israel has carried out hundreds, if not thousands, of airstrikes in Syria over the past few years, and for good reason, because they are targeting specifically Iranian and Hezbollah and various jihadi assets inside that country, weapons depots, weapons shipments, factories, aka plastics warehouses, creating all sorts of weapons that will be used against Israel. So Israel preemptively acts to take out those shipments and those weapons depots, again, targeting Iranian and Hezbollah assets inside Syria. Chief among them, you know the name by now. If you watch the Watchman Newscast on a regular basis, the term PGM will be very familiar to you. PGM, that is precision guided munitions. That is 1A in terms of what Israel is targeting in Syria right now. What are precision guided munitions? They do exactly what their name says. These are missiles that hit their targets with great precision and great accuracy. Targets like, God forbid, the Dimona nuclear reactor. Now, Iran has been trying to deliver these precision missiles to Hezbollah for the past few years. Many times Israel will take out these convoys that are traveling from Syria into southern Lebanon, which are carrying, usually not these days, fully intact PGMs, but PGM parts which can then be assembled in southern Lebanon by Hezbollah. This is a red line, folks, an absolute red line for Israel. It would be a major game changer for Hezbollah to get its hands on a vast number of these PGMs at Israel's doorstep. The Iranian nuclear threat, number one, obviously, on Israel's list, but the PGM threat is 1A, and it very well could be the trigger for a future war. I do not exaggerate that. We know that a major conflict is coming between Israel and its enemies to the north, Hezbollah and the Iranian regime in Syria, and the PGM factor could very well be the trigger. It's something we continue to keep a very close eye on here at the Watchman Newscast. Hey, speaking of Iran's proxies and that ring of fire that surrounds Israel, that ring also affects U.S. troops in Iraq. And would you believe, this is something we've been following very closely here in the newscast. Not many media outlets have been keeping a close eye on this, but we have been for you. On Tuesday, May 4th, we saw a third consecutive night 3 nights in a row, Iraqi Shia militias, Iran-backed, launching rockets at U.S. personnel in Iraq. Now, this time on Tuesday, it was the Ain al-Assad air base in western Iraq. U.S. troops are stationed there. 2 rockets last night targeted that base. Thankfully, no one was hurt or injured, no major damage there. But rewind to Monday, May 3rd. 6 rockets targeted the Balad air base north of Baghdad. We talked about that on yesterday's newscast. One contractor who works with the U.S. was injured in that attack. And then on Sunday, May 2nd, 2 rockets targeted U.S. forces who are stationed at Baghdad International Airport. 3 days in a row of Iran-backed rocket strikes against U.S. personnel in Iraq. Folks, call me crazy. This is a major story and a major escalation. At the same time, we have on a practically daily basis another Iranian proxy, the Houthis in Yemen, launching rockets and attack drones against Saudi Arabia. So this is happening 2 separate streams daily now. U.S. forces in Iraq targeted, the Saudis on Saudi soil, whether it's military installations, oil facilities, civilian areas, targeted. What is the common denominator here, folks? The head of the snake in Tehran, the Iranian regime, equipping its proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, various Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, Hamas, more on them in a second, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen. The common denominator is in Tehran. It all leads back to the Iranian regime, not the Iranian people. The Iranian regime, which suppresses its people and has been doing so for the past 42 years, that is the source of all this instability, the rockets, the missiles, the drones. You can find the source in Tehran, in the office of the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. Okay, we will move on to the third story before we get out of here today. Hamas, I mentioned them a second ago. They are levying new threats against Israel, in particular a shadowy Hamas military commander for their Qassam brigades. That's the military wing of this Hamas terror movement backed by Iran. Surprise, surprise. Mohammed Daif, now he's been kind of underground for several years now. He has released his first statement in 7 years, threatening Israel over Jerusalem. What's happening right now in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood in Jerusalem, near the old city, Israelis want to buy property there, and why not? Jerusalem is the ancient and eternal and ancestral capital of Israel and the Jewish people. I believe that Jews, I believe anyone, should be able to live wherever they want. So Jews want to buy property in Jerusalem. How crazy? Well, some Palestinians do not like that, and of course Hamas is chief among them. There has been unrest there in this neighborhood, and now Hamas is using this as a pretext to perhaps launch new attacks. We've reported here in the newscast about increased tensions between Israel and Hamas over the past 2 or 3 weeks. Almost 2 weeks ago, we had a rocket barrage, some 50 rockets targeting southern Israel out of Gaza. There were also clashes between Palestinians and Israeli police in the eastern half of Jerusalem. And then you have the other factor. Palestinian elections were canceled last weekend by Mahmoud Abbas of the Palestinian Authority, Hamas's rival there. But Hamas, instead of blaming Abbas, is blaming Israel. No big surprise there. Again, a pretext for further attacks. And something to leave you with, folks. If the Iranian regime is clearly upping its game, so to speak, through its proxies in Iraq and in Saudi Arabia, what's to say they won't light that spark with Hamas and begin rocket barrages against Israel as well? So you have one regime in Tehran igniting the entire region with rockets, missiles, and attack drones from Iraq to Yemen to Gaza, Lebanon to Syria and beyond. Yet you have the United States wanting to come to the table and strike a deal with the worst actor in the Middle East and perhaps a top 3 in the world for sure in the form of the Iranian regime. Hey, we will continue to keep a close eye on all of this for you. Again, we will discuss this and much more on our Watchman Newscast live stream tomorrow right here on YouTube between 4 and 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in the United States. If you're in Israel, you'll be 7 hours ahead. If you're in Great Britain, you're 5 hours ahead. You get the picture. So between 4 and 5 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, right here on YouTube. Be sure to check us out. And until then, remember, God Almighty still, yes, still sits on the throne, even as this ring of fire ignites and all of these nasty things are happening. God is sovereign. He will never leave you or forsake you. Put your trust in Him and you will have the peace that surpasses all understanding. Hey, thanks for joining us here today on the Watchman Newscast. Until tomorrow, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, click subscribe, and tap the bell icon to turn on notifications for new Watchman Newscast episodes every weekday.